So this is Act 1, Scene 4. We are before Macbeth's castle, and in the previous scene, there's the long speech from Lady Macbeth where she's saying she wants to take away her feminine qualities, with the quote, "unsex me here," and she asks for knights to cover up the deed so that heaven can't see anything that happens. She's talking about her knife, and even though she doesn't use the word murder, she's suggesting really strongly that she is going to be the one who does the deed. So if we go back and have a look, you can see the quotes a little bit higher up. She's talking about the fatal entrance of Duncan. This means that he's going to end up dead. The battlements belong to her. She's the one who calls on the evil spirits. She uses these commands. She tells them to unsex her or take away her female gender, to fill her up with cruelty, to make her blood thick. So that would be unnatural and something tough. She says, stop any pity that she might feel and to take away any feelings, any natural feelings that she might have. And the whole idea of duty that you would feel towards the king. She doesn't want anything to stop her deadly purpose. And I think our notes have got a little bit muddled up here because I can't see where the translation of fell has gone, but fell actually means deadly. So this means murder. Oh wait, I found it. It's here. I'm going to move it. There you go. So foul purpose means deadly intention, and that actually means murder. Now, this is the quote that was causing much hilarity, as it always does whenever we teach this bit. And when she tells the evil spirits to take her milk, milk is obviously femininity. Women produce milk, they feed babies. And she wants the evil spirits to take that milk and turn it into poison. And you can link that back to to the quote that she makes about Macbeth, which is quite rude. And she says he's got too much of the milk of human kindness. She wants the murdering ministers, and actually that is the only place that the word murder appears. And she kind of shifts that word into evil, villains. Now, then she wants the darkness of night to come towards her. She wants it to shroud itself in thick, dark smoke coming from hell. Again, it's her knife, my keen knife. It belongs to her. She doesn't want heaven to see. No, heaven can't see. And the word peep means to look or to be able to see. And if heaven could see, heaven would cry, stop, stop, which is what that means right there. And if you do have any questions, just pause the recording and type them in the text box and I'll try to answer them for you. Obviously, we did this last lesson, so I'm hoping that it makes sense and you should have the notes on that already. If there is anything you missed, look for the colour coding, which was done really beautifully, and you can see the interpretation next to it. Hopefully it makes sense. Even if it doesn't make complete sense now, it will make much more sense when we come back and we revise it, when we've done this. When we're looking at this later, everything will make much more sense, and you'll have these gorgeous, beautiful notes, which are just here to help you. So she thinks she can see the future, almost like she is a witch, which is quite creepy. She says her husband's letters have transported her, almost like it's a kind of magic. And obviously Macbeth's now in the room with her. He's very romantic. He says, my dearest love, Duncan is coming. We spoke about this bit, and I tried to explain what it means. Macbeth says, Duncan is planning, he purposes, to leave tomorrow. She says, oh no, he won't. And the actual phrase, the sun will never see that day. So obviously the sun will rise. So she's basically saying there's no day that he's going to leave this place because he's going to be dead. And if you're dead, you can't leave the place. Then she tells him off. We've spoken already about women trying to take charge of men. She tells him off. She says, everybody else will be able to see your thoughts on your face. They'll be able to read you like a book. And she says that's bad. You shouldn't show what you're really thinking. So she's really telling him off for having thoughts, basically, which is, or emotions, if he needs to hide them. Then there's the important quote. She says, you need to look innocent, like a flower. Obviously, that's imagery, because he's not really a flower. And then she says he has to be like a serpent, and you know what the serpent means. And if we move the quotes to the right place, you can see that the colours match up, and you should have the interpretation matched up with it. She always uses the word business. She can't use the word murder. And I've said that this suggests that it's something unspeakable, which hopefully is quite easy to remember. Now, putting it into my dispatch, she keeps using the word my, as if everything belongs to her. And then at the very end of the scene, she says, leave everything else to me and I will do the rest. Which is very striking for women in this period. She's saying, we're going to get the royal power, we're going to get the masterdom. And then she tells him off because she says, you're always going to be a bit anxious if you change your loyalty, but don't worry, I will help you with it. So she's quite a good wife because she's helpful, which is nice. The scene then changes. They're outside, they're in front of Macbeth's castle, and different characters have arrived. Duncan is the king. Malcolm is his eldest son, the Prince of Cumbernauld, the step that I must leap over or fall on, the guy who's going to stand in the way of Macbeth's ambition. Donalbain is the next son. Then you've got Banquo, who used to fight with Macbeth. They're both brave like eagles, brave as lions. So Banquo is actually quite an important character. The witch has also had a prophecy for Banquo to say that his sons would be king. And Banquo actually is the ancestor of James I. These guys, don't worry too much about who's who. They're just the Scottish lords. At the moment, they are Duncan's friends, and they're all hanging around with Duncan, who is currently the king, not been murdered yet. But obviously there is a plan afoot, and that plan is to murder him. Now, Duncan turns up. Here he is. He says, this castle, Macbeth's castle, has a very pleasant position or seat. The air nimbly, quickly, and sweetly recommends itself to our gentle senses. I don't know why I forgot to highlight the word gentle. It's a really good word to link to Duncan. I feel like Duncan is shown as being too gentle. But maybe Shakespeare is saying he's a gentle, nice person and he doesn't deserve to die. Nobody does, really. Then he says, look, here's our hostess. In other words, Lady Macbeth has just turned up. So he's like, oh, hello, I give you honour. Then she does this really complicated speech. It feels like a riddle, so just look at the kind of words she's using. She says, we give you our service. You've given us so many honours, though. The honours are deep, the honours are broad. Your Majesty, you have loaded our house with these honours or dignities. Like, he's put them all in this gigantic pile. Now, there is an interpretation to go with it, and I'm going to move that because you actually should have that interpretation right next to it. So, lots of imagery of loyalty. And why is this suspicious that she's talking so much about loyalty? Is because she's just been planning to murder him. So the audience knows that this is really different to her secret thoughts. And the technique for that, I hope you're shouting the technique, though obviously I can't hear you, is, or maybe I can hear you, I don't know, dramatic irony. Possibly you're all listening at different times, I don't know. So the audience knows what is her snake-like true, thoughts beneath her innocent words. And, can't spell that right. And because she's a woman, she's obviously not going to seem very suspicious because she would look quite gentle. Right, Duncan, king. Where's the Thane of Cawdor? He means Macbeth. He says, gosh, he rides very well, very fast, because Macbeth has got to the castle before Duncan. And he thinks the reason that Macbeth rode so fast is because of his great love for Lady Macbeth, his romantic love for his dearest partner. But this is a key quote. So Duncan describes the love as being sharp. Obviously, that's not always a good thing because stabby things are sharp, and so it's got that idea of violence linked to the love. And Lady Macbeth's is quite a violent romantic partner, I think. So she's as sharp as Macbeth's spur. A spur is what you have on the heel of your boot if you're a cowboy or Scottish Macbeth, and you sort of prick the horse with it because it's sharp and it makes the horse go faster, so it's like slightly stabbing the horse. And that's actually what Lady Macbeth is compared to, something that stabs the horse to make it go faster. And you've got a note there, so just join it up to the right place. So his love helped him to get home before us. He uses the word us because he's a king, so he uses something called the royal we, as if he's something greater than just a king, something greater than himself. Then he says, fair and noble hostess, we will be your guest tonight. We know this, that's obvious. Lady Macbeth says, okay, good, we will be your servants forever. Dramatic irony, because it seems that they're loyal, but obviously they're not. Scene 7, we're in Macbeth's castle. So basically they've just gone inside the castle. That's pretty much not the only difference actually, because it's just Macbeth. He's the only character on the stage. So this is really his private thoughts. Now, complicated speech, and I've said to you before, do not call it confusing, because if you say it's confusing, it makes you sound like you're confused, but you're not confused, because this is deliberate. Shakespeare's doing it deliberately. So don't say confusing. I will write down what you should write instead. Don't write this as confusing, even though it is confusing. We're going to use a different phrase, which sounds much more academic. Hidden meanings, unspeakable, riddles. Any of those will get you really high grades. The word confusing will tend to make them think that you're confused. So these ones are good. And you can take a note of that if you want into the margin. Really important. Because, in fact, so much of this play is confusing. Just because the language is difficult, that it is worth knowing where is Shakespeare doing it deliberately. So, it's not just you. He is doing it on purpose. So, this word if, now I'm going to read it and then I'm going to try and explain it as I'm reading it. If it, the murder, were done, if the murder is going to get done, when it's got to get done, here we are, then it were good if it, the murder, were done quickly. In other words, if it's got to get done and soon, then if it's got to get done, then it is a good idea to do it fast. Which is probably true. If you're going to do something that is difficult, it's probably better to do it quickly because then it's over. So that's his first point. Now, here's some really fancy analysis. I did write this for the top set, so it is pretty grade 9. If you can make sense of it, that's brilliant. The basic idea is he keeps repeating the idea of done, done, done. So you've got quite violent stabby plosives, you've got the sense of action, you've got the feeling of speed, and then these words, they're just words for possibilities, if, were. So you've got the whole idea that murder is kind of happening in his mind, it's all very imaginary at the moment, but that the idea is very powerful. And because he can see it in his mind, that means it's going to happen. Now, this bit, super confusing, but I will try to explain it to you as clearly possible. So, if the assassination, the murder, could... Oh, hang on, let me move these up. could stop all the consequences. So if killing him meant that nothing bad could happen to us, and catch with his death success. If death was this point that everything would work, nothing bad would happen, and that this stabby blow was the be-all and the end-all. If the beginning of it was the end of it, then, just ignore that bit, that's imagery, then we'd be able to jump to this beautiful future, this beautiful life to come. So we would jump from this bank, like riverbank of time, onto the other side, into the future, and that is normally referring to heaven. So if we do the murder, we can kind of go straight to victory. But it's also quite ironic because it is often used for heaven. Now, just checking it's still recording, and the reason I really hope it's recording, because if it's not, I've talked for absolutely ages and it's all completely wasted. Hopefully not. Now, this is going to be a key quote. It's not highlighted in colour. Not quite sure how to do this. Maybe you guys could do that. That would be brilliant. But if I do a murder, is what he's saying. But in these cases where someone does a murder, we're teaching other people bloody instructions. In other words, we're teaching other people how to murder us. And this will return and plague the inventor, the person who did it first. And it brings a poisoned chalice. Super important quotes. Now, a chalice is like a royal drinking cup. It's made of gold. And the point he's making is, even though I'm going to have the royal cup, someone's going to pour poison in it. So it's going to be like a mixed horror nightmare of everything I ever wanted. But because I got it through murder, the whole thing will be covered in blood and I will end up dead. And that the cup will end up coming to our own lips. Now, he means the king. The king is here in double trust. That just means like twice as much. Trust, he trusts me, he loves me, obviously. Firstly, because I am his relative, and the explanation's there. Also, I'm his subject, which means I need to be loyal to him. You can see the notes over here. And both of these argue strongly, oops, didn't mean to do that, here, against the deed, and the deed means murder. Then, because I am his host, and when you're the host, you have to protect and look after the person who comes to stay. So you need to be the one who shuts the door against the murderer. Definitely not be the one with the knife. So you're supposed to stop people getting in who could be dangerous. You're definitely not supposed to start stabbing them yourself, just in case you weren't aware. Besides, this Duncan, this king, has, tricky language, but has carried his behaviour so meekly, gently, has been so clear, as in truthful or good, in his great office as king, that his goodness, his virtues, will plead like angels. He's such a good man that angels will sing for him. And you've got the interpretation here. And the angels will have like trumpets, and they will cry out against the deep damnation of anybody who tries to take Duncan away by murdering him. And that links to that. And pity will blow the horrid deed in every eye. This image here, we'll deal with that next. It's an image of what pity would look like a naked or innocent newborn baby. So pity is described as a naked newborn baby. And it's interesting because Macbeth is using almost quite feminine imagery here of babies, heaven, and he says it'll be like a heavenly angel. Blow the horrid deed in every eye. So in other words, everyone will see it, everyone will know it, and this is super dramatic. Tears will drown the wind. There's a big interpretation of it here. Strange mixture of pity and horror. A lot of tears, but the idea of drowning, dying. The tears will be so great that even the wind will drown. So that's an image of nature. Then he says, and I thought this was quite weird, he says, I have no spur. And the spur is the stabby thing that makes the horse go faster. He already said that but it wasn't him, it was Duncan who used that phrase to describe Lady Macbeth. He says, I have no spur. So he doesn't really have a spur within himself. Duncan realises that his wife, Macbeth's wife, is like a spur, but Macbeth says he doesn't have one. He says he doesn't really have any good reason to kind of stab my need to do anything except ambition. So the only thing that makes him go faster is ambition, and that is linked to Lady Macbeth. Vaulting ambition is one of the most important quotes in the play, so you're going to have to highlight that. The interpretation of it is here. The description of the word vaulting, leaping ambition. Leaping ambition is all that he's got. But it's not very good because if you've ever done gymnastics, you might know about this. It leaps too high above itself and it falls on the other side. We also had the image of the Prince of Cumbernauld being someone that he has to leap over. Now, Lady Macbeth turns up. So from this point, he is not speaking to himself. He's going to be speaking to her. What he says is this, and it's quite strong. He says, we will go no further in this business of murder. He says to her, we're going to stop. I'm not going to do it. You're not going to do it either. And you can tell because he uses the word we. We will go no further in this business. If you forgot that in the exam and you wrote the word go, that would be fine because it means exactly the same thing. And believe it or not, the examiners are actually not that fussy about how perfect your quotes are. This is a really pivotal moment, the moment where he says, no, we're going to stop. Because up to this point, he's going to be king. The witches have said he's going to be king. He knows he's going to do the murder. She's going to help him. She's evil. He's evil. A bit evil. But then he changes his mind. And it really fits in with what she said. She said, you are too kind. You're too full of the milk of human kindness. And this is true, because you can see it here. And the reasons that he gives are these. We're not going to do it because he gave me honour of late. He gave me honour recently. And I've bought golden opinions. Everyone has a golden opinion of me now. Brave Macbeth. Like lions, like eagles. Bellona's bridegroom. He's unseamed him from the nave to the chaps. He's just at the top of his power. And it really links with the point, I think, that you were making, which is if he's already Thane of Cawdor, why does he need anything else? He says, actually, I've got a good title. I want to enjoy it. And I've got this from all sorts of people. Everyone is giving me respect. And I want to enjoy the respect. I want to wear the respect in its newest, shiniest form. I don't want to cast it aside, throw it aside so quickly. I want to enjoy the moment. And then she gets really angry with him. And I think I said this to you before. She chastises him with the valour of her tongue. So her language is quite violent. She says, were you drunk? This is imagery. The idea that he's dressed himself in a false costume so that he's a liar. Has his ambition slept? So is he drunk? Is he sleepy? Has he just woken up from this kind of dream that he had about ambition? Does he look green and pale? Before, he was free. And this is a really important quote, so make sure you highlight it. Are you afraid? And the interpretation's there. So could you join those, please? Are you afraid? Nobody wants their wife speaking to them like this. Are you afraid to be the same in your actions and your bravery as you are in your mind? So what she means there is the desire is to be king, and she's challenging whether he's brave enough to do it. And all the other quotes we've seen about Macbeth, it's like, he's so brave, he's so brave, he's so brave. And she's actually challenging and she's undermining his bravery. And she's also challenging whether he can do what he says he'll do. So is he the same in his mind as he is in his actions? So it's actually challenging his identity. Is he really what he says he is? Then, this is a really good quote. It's quite a complicated quote, though. He tells her off. He says, I dare do everything that is appropriate for a man. Yes, of course I'm a man. I do everything that makes a man into a man. Anyone who wants to do more, in other words, murder somebody, is not a real man. Which is also funny or ironic because Lady Macbeth is not a man. But when he says man, he just also means like a good man, a true man, somebody who's noble. Then she starts calling him a beast, or she's not exactly calling him a beast. She's sort of saying, what beast was it within you that made you suggest this idea to me? As if he's the one who's told it. Then she says, when you dared to do it, then you were a man. So she contradicts him. And if you could just have a bit of ambition, if you could just want to be more, in other words, to be king, then you would be even more of a man, because obviously a king is more than a man. When you told me this idea at first, it wasn't the right time and it wasn't the right place to murder him. Neither of them was suitable, but now we have the right time, we have the right place. They have made themselves happen, but it has unmade you, and that means ruined you. In other words, you might say you want something, or you want to do something, and it's a bit difficult. You say you really want it, but you can't do it right now because. But then suddenly, you have the opportunity. You have the right time, you have the right place. But there's something quite frightening about the idea that you might actually have to do it. That's the point she's making. Oh, this is the bit that always causes hilarity, so you might want to get it out of your system. This means she has breastfed a baby. She's suckled a baby, which means she's fed a baby. And she says, I know how tender, how lovely, how gentle it is to love the babe that milks me, which is literally what babies do if you're breastfeeding them. But I would, while it was smiling in my face, my baby, have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and smashed the brains out if I had sworn, in the same way that you have sworn to do this. That is gross. Probably you're shouting that already, but I can't hear you. I don't know. Really gross, really graphic imagery. Violence. Just bear in mind, there's the idea of the woman imagery, the gentleness, the tenderness. She says, I would do it. Just bear in mind she never has, and maybe she never would, because words are not the same as deeds. Then his tone really changes. You notice this. He's kind of saying, like, okay, but what if it goes wrong? It's like almost agreed with her straight away. She says, what? Fail? Never. If you just screw your courage to the sticking place, we will never fail. So just be brave, make it stick, and we won't fail. Then she explains her evil plan. When Duncan is asleep, I will get his guards, his 2 chamberlains. I will give them wine, and I'll give them so much wine that it will convince them that their memories, the guardian of the brain, will turn to smoke. So I'll get them so drunk they don't know what's happening. Then they will be in pig-like sleep. So if you do drink too much, it can make you very sleepy and a bit like a pig. And then she says, if his guards are all drunk, what is there that you and I cannot do to the unguarded Duncan? We can do anything. It's kind of horrible because actually Lady Macbeth and Macbeth are supposed to be guarding him and keeping him safe. What can we not put on his spongy, stupid guards who will bear the guilt of our great murder? In other words, we can blame the guards. They were drunk. We can blame the guards. Then he gets really excited. He's like, oh my god, you should bring forth men children only. You should only have boys because they would be really fierce and terrifying. Will it not be understood, if we have marked them with blood, that those sleepy guards of his chamber used their daggers, and that they have done it? He's like, oh my god, that's brilliant. What if we cover them in blood? It will seem like they did it while they were drunk. She says, yes, anyone who dares to believe anything different, or nobody will dare to believe anything different. Then he says, I am settled. He's changed his mind. They are going to do it. I will bend up every bodily power that I have to do this terrible deed. Go away. I will go away, in other words. And I will trick the time with the fairest show. So I'm going to put on an act or a performance. Then he echoes her words, which kind of shows that she has really poured her spirits into his ear. She's poured her words into his mind. The serpent and the flower. False face must hide what the false heart does know. There's your interpretation there, so match it up. We're at the end of the act, and I'm pretty sure that we must be at the end of the lesson. If you haven't finished it, obviously you can carry on next time, but we'll see how this goes, and if it goes well, we will do more.